Thank you. All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Sauti. We'd like to welcome you to this workshop, What It Is Like to Live in My Own Skin, Part 3, Deciphering Significance, Deep Healing Racism Together. We also are welcome to the 99 Days of Peace Conference, where we continue our 4-part series on what is it like to live in my skin. This is the 3rd workshop in the series, where we continue exploring our deep dive into colonialism and how to heal racism together. This workshop is dedicated to examining Indigenous boarding schools, the Doctrine of Discovery, the Pope's recent visit and apology, so-called, in Canada, as well as the significance of the words that were spoken and looking into whether there is anything real in those words. Here we examine what a real and true action would look like and why. Before I pass off to Mari, I would like to now introduce myself again. Ukumbwa Sauti. I'm an initiated elder in the Dagara tradition and had worked directly with Malidoma Some, who is now one of our ancestors, one of our beloved ancestors. I do healing work in the Boston area and have worked in other areas of the world. And I am the son of Jean and Marshall. And I'm just going to mention that I was raised in the Catholic Church, which I believe gives me a particular and specific kind of perspective on today's deliberations, as all of our presenters today have. So thank you for having me here, Mari. Thank you for having me here, everyone. And why don't we go to you now, Mari, to continue?
Hello, everyone. Welcome. So glad to have you. My name is Mari Fix, or I'm called Mari Fix McEwen, or Saint Eda Bofrush Koyadentus. And please trust this experiential process. This workshop will have space for you to share your feelings and insights in the 2 sharing circles after our 2 groups of elders speak. So please make note if anything comes up for you during our workshop, as you are an important part of the whole and the solution. And a big thank you to John Raymer and Sign Network for your support, and all the tech people here and all the speakers. So let us start by purifying and sanctifying the space and calling in our ancestors. When Sister Olarisha Chise Ajay calls for you to call in your ancestors and mentors, please actively call them into your physical space and into our circle. Okay.
All right, there we go. Okay. You want to hear me?
I'm right now. I'm starting.
Okay.
Yes. Creator, grandmothers, grandfathers. This is your granddaughter, Saint Eda Bofrush Koyadentus speaking, welcoming all here from the 4 directions into this sacred circle. We cleanse and purify ourselves in a good way with the clearing power of the cedar and the gentleness of the sage. As the earth and fire join each of us, they transmute themselves. Invite these healing medicines to completely wash over your body, mind, spirit, and feeling, bathing every thought, every word, every deed brought into this space and beyond as we explore these deep topics at hand. Visualize this feather brushing away and clearing off anything heavy or outmoded that you have carried with you. Anything that you no longer wish to hold on to, release it all. Bless it all in a kind and gentle way. May you all feel lighter, brighter, and clear to communicate in this purified sacred circle of intention and creation. All my relations. And I pass to Chise.
Mi tutu o na tutu ile tutu tutu la ye. To freshen the road, to freshen the house, to freshen Elegba. Olojo, Oni, Mojubai Bashe. We give praise to the owner of the day. Ilao room Mojubai Bashe, Iwao room Mojubai Bashe, Ariwa Mojubai Bashe, Gusu Mojubai Bashe. We give honor to and praise to the four directions. Ego, Mojuba, ancestors. We give praise to our ancestors. Mojuba, we give praise to our ancestors who have gone before us. Ibai Baiton. Mojubaba Banlua, Mojuba Yanlua, Mojubaba Tia, Ikuorisha, Ibai Baiton. We give praise to those who have paved the way for us. We give praise to those who have taught us the precepts of Ifaya, of enlightenment. Now, we will say the names of our ancestors who have moved before us and who have paved the way for us. I would like for everyone, silently or overtly, out loud, you can say the names of your ancestors. When I say Mojuba, which means we give respect and praise. Ibaibai, that is, Ibaibai is to the one who has gone before. Mojuba, to those who have educated us. Hold on a second. That is perfect timing. Mojuba, to those of our educators who have gone before us. Ibaibai Ton, Mojuba, to those of our warriors who have fought for us. Ibaibai Ton, Mojuba, to those of our teachers and preceptors who have gone before us. Ibaibai Ton, Mojuba, those who have died in the Middle Passage. Ibaibai Ton, Mojuba, those who all of those who have died for freedom. Ibaibai Ton. Mojuba, those whose names we cannot remember. Ibaibai Ton. Biakolo Bajubaile Ilealano. Modupueo. And I pass.
Cynthia, please call in the directions now.
Calling in the east, Edher, August air, and the element of air. Calling in the south, Jeshkart, August Dochan, and the element of fire. Calling in the west, Yeter, August Ishke, and the element of water. Calling in the north, Twishgart, August Dun, and the element of earth. Calling in the above and below, Huas, August Hish. And calling in the out, through, out, within, and through, Amach, Isti, August Frij. And I pass to the center.
Auntie Molly, please will you pray us in?
It's great to be with you again today. I give thanks today, and the favorite words that I say when I wake up in the morning, good morning world. And I'm talking to the universe and everything in it, and everything without it, in the outer reaches where our ancestors live and hold a sacred space for us, and bring us the knowledge that we seek when we're ready to hear it and to know it and to understand it. I give you thanks for this beautiful season of the year. I give you thanks, a great creator, for all the people who are embracing, perhaps unconsciously or subconsciously, the concept that we are approaching here. We ask, a great creator, that you prepare them in a good and kind way to hear the truth and to take responsibility for the actions that must be taken in order to change the paradigm such as it exists today. One that has been empirical in its dominance of the world for 1,500 or more years, and has shaped the world and everything in it. And I pray at this time that we take up the courage in our spirits and the strength that the ancestors have left with us to be able to survive whatever we've survived up to this point, to clear our voices, to make the message heard. And then a call to action. Because the doorway was open to us. As we saw a few weeks ago, my country had a visit from a foreign country, from a foreign land, that brought a foreign religion to us and thought that we were savages. One of the greatest memories that I hold dearest to my heart is my two grandfathers. One was Swedish and Sami, and raised, I believe it was Lutheran. The other was an Indian chief who was raised in the Catholic, believed very strongly in the Catholic Church, etc. And both of them would sit over a cup of coffee and have discussions. And the most precious one that I heard them come to agreement with was this: yes, there is only one God. So through willful ignorance, etc., there was laws and rules put into action in 1453, etc., that changed the concept, that took away all of our dignity as indigenous peoples of the world. They took away our dignity, every bit of it. Still, our hearts have been open to receive the world in this country called Canada. We opened up our arms and said, come. When you have what you need, you'll give back to us. It's been hundreds of years. And you know something? It hasn't happened yet. But I'll tell you one thing that I learned from the Pope's visit, that in spite or despite his handlers, lawyers and advisors and counselors, he's a man who speaks 7 languages. And yes, perhaps he didn't know the English word for what he saw, what he had heard that was spoken to him in the Vatican and over here by the people. And when he found it, despite everybody's effort to stop him from saying it, he said the word genocide. That's the only word I needed to hear. I never watched any of it. I was busy with other things, very happily occupied with other things during that week. And I didn't want to give it any more space than I figured that it deserved in my consciousness, which even as a child was very, very little. I fought the church since I can remember. Was threatened with excommunication twice before I was 8 years old. And because I didn't believe the fairy tales that they were telling me. I never could believe that what was it? I was born with original sin, etc. That was one thing. And the concept of conception, as the church had said, it was not anything to do with human procreation, etc. And I voiced that, and I was written up, and whatnot. So I've always had a very difficult time believing in a punishing God. And am I being heard? Okay, because it says I'm not over here. So, all right, I'm going to ignore that. So, what I believe when I heard the word genocide is the church will go kicking and screaming away from the truth of that. It will do everything to retain its power and its hold on the world. I don't know if any of you have noticed, but I know in Canada, when we get a new prime minister, he runs off to meet the Pope and the Queen. I believe the President of the United States also did that. What does that tell you? The status quo is not going to change from that particular benchmark. It will start from us because we have the consciousness within us. They don't want to change. It is up to us to make that change happen, and not in any ways that have been tried before. But our consciousness, our conscience must be our guide in our workspace, in our workplace. It must be our guide in our homes, when we're teaching our children and our loved ones. And it also must be in our consciousness when we are talking to the community, our community of like-minded people, because that is where the action will begin and it will take place. Yes. The doctrine of discovery, its usefulness as a tool is long past because the world has resources. They call it resources. Has been used to the point that the world is, Mother Earth is protesting all of the destruction that is happening all over the world and the carelessness with which people are extracting whatever they need from her bosom. We have freedoms that were never dreamed about since the inception of the Catholic Church and the dominant role that it had and has. There was no such thing as freedom. People were slaves and serfs to the powers, and that was the church. But we have the freedom. We have the freedom to make these changes, to begin this process. And it's incumbent on us to help those coming up behind us to carry on these concepts, to carry them on, and to bring them up to fruition. And my understanding of the universal law, when things don't change, when a portal opens, there's an opportunity. It happened very quickly with Pope. Within 90 days, he had a flight, he had an itinerary, and he came to my country called Canada. So the portal was open. Right at the very end, as he was getting on the plane when he spoke the word genocide, he said, I was looking for the word. He couldn't find that word in English. Finally, someone told him the word was genocide, and he said the word genocide because he needed to speak his truth, not the dogma, not the things that the lawyers wanted him to say, etc., and his handlers and advisors, etc. So you can't undo it. What has been said and begun is here, and the process needs to begin for reparation, to start to be conscious of the wrongs that were done to billions of people in this world who suffered and died unjustly. Yes, getting rid of the doctrine of discovery would be a good way to return our human dignity. But we can do that as a people. We can do that as people with good conscience, strong spirit, and guidance from our ancestors. They're the ones who opened up the doors to allow these new people to come into our land. So it's time to give back. When I talk about that portal that opened and something has to change, that's what I'm talking about. That change must take place. Or, the way I see it, it will implode upon its own evil and cruelty to children. As you know, we had the 215 bodies recovered in mass graves here in my territory, the territory my father is from. I'm half Shuswapmuk. And when I know of that, I can't help but feel sad from my heart and my spirit that those were my relatives. Those were my aunties and uncles, future aunties and uncles and relatives. It happened in my lifetime as well, because I went to one of those places. And it didn't matter which one you went to, they were all the same, evil. I never was hit. I was never yelled at as a child. I went to that school. And I spoke to one of my brother outside sitting on the steps in our language, and they want to make an example of me. Well, they said, put out your hands. It's none. Reached behind her belt and put out this rubber strap, hit my hand on one side, hit my hand on the other, and I just about screamed the place down. If it was possible to do that, it would have happened that day. And the indignity, the shock and the horror that a person that was supposed to be looking after us could do that. Malice aforehand. That they could do that with malice and glee was awful. Just that one experience. There were those in my time, if the nuns got after you on the first day you were at that school, they never let up till you died or you left. And it could have been either one. It was that way. Mostly it was the children who were shy, and those are the children who didn't know the English language. And it went on and on and on. The terrible things that happened after the lights went out are totally unconscionable, and something that we had no way of knowing the meaning of it. And that happened to boys and girls alike. I think that the church has an awful long ways to go to make any kind of reparation to the people of this world. I think an honest paragraph might have been okay, but the greatest things in the world don't always happen that way. People are trying to repress the word genocide, but it had to come out. So that opens the door and you can't close it. As the universe opened that portal, here's your opportunity. So they're not going to do anything because they're very comfortable in their power. And it's up to each and every one of us, thinking, feeling human beings with beautiful, alive spirits to bring about changes that are needed. And they desperately are at this time. I thank you so very much for sharing this with you at this time. I feel very humble. I feel very proud of the journey that I've made through life to reclaim my spirit, to become the medicine person that I am, the healer that I am, because of the gifts of my ancestors, and particularly with the training of my grandfather, Chief Eric Ashusha, and my grandmother, Kutstinza. My mother is Ayamakpa, and my dad is Sweetway. And I honor them today and give thanks for this life that I've been granted. And I give you thanks, each and every one of you, for listening today. And I'll stay with you. And I love each and every one of you. Thank you for being on this journey with me.
Thank you, Auntie Molly. I have a comment here because most of the 4.7 billion Canadian dollars that were paid as reparations to Indigenous peoples came from the federal government, and the Protestant Church paid about 9.2 million Canadian dollars, but the Catholic Church, which operated about 70% or more of the 130 schools, only paid 1.2 million out of the $25 million that it promised and agreed to raise in cash contributions as reparations. In 2013, the federal government challenged the millions of dollars in legal and administrative fees that the Catholic Church intended to count as part of its settlement payments at the Court of the Queen's Bench. So the thing is, they, instead of paying $25 million, they paid $1 million and pretended the rest was administrative fees. So we're talking about $23.8 million of administrative fees so they could get away with not paying a penny. And this is something that just keeps on going. And Auntie, that was a beautiful sharing. And for anyone who came in late, if you feel you're in need of emotional assistance during our workshop, there's going to be a document posted in the chat. Hopefully we can post in there. There was a problem posting the chat last time. So, and also we've closed the chat to people chatting while the elders are speaking. We'll only be opening it during the speaking session. And if for some reason you can't talk in the chat during the speaking session, then we apologize because we're having problems with that fact. So also, if you'd like to join our email list or give a love donation for the elders, that link will be in the chat. I would like to now open the floor to Elder Brother Ukumbwa to speak as a speaker, and I pass to you.
Thank you so much. I think there are a number of things that I just want to share today, along with what Auntie Molly has shared from her heart, from her wisdom.
Ukumbwa, right now you are muted, so you're going to have to start. Okay.
I am now unmuted. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge the sharing of Auntie Molly previous to this, from her lived experience, from her history, from her knowledge and wisdom, and her ability to see forward from those moments of genocide, of oppression, of continued racism in the world. And one of the things that comes to mind for me with this is that we are called into a place of solidarity with the Indigenous people who are whose land is now templated by the settler colony of Canada, to all the original peoples there, that in our process of anti-racism, we have to acknowledge this lived experience, this historical reality of the Indigenous people there, of the First Nations. And one of the things that comes up when and I'm glad that Pope Frank, as I call him, said the word genocide. I think that's very, very important, as Auntie Molly said, to open up that door, to open up that gateway, if you will, that portal. But the peace that has to come with that, not only for him, not only for the Roman Catholic Church, not only for the Vatican, not only for Christianity in general, not only for European colonialism in general, is an accountability for that, is the ability for them to be humble in the complicity with that conception of genocide, that reality of genocide that still continues to this day. These are not things that are way off in the past, in the distant past. Again, as Auntie Molly said, she was a part of this process of the concentration camps, or residential schools as they're more popularly known. So I
You're once again muted, Ukumba.
Okay, that happened technologically, not by my hand.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Sometimes the matrix is not our friend. But thank you for letting me know. So this level of accountability has to be taken in, and one of the things that's important in this is that we have to take history personally. We have to know that history is a personal thing. It's not just something that sits in a book. And the ancestors know it surely doesn't sit in the poorly written and poorly gate-kept textbooks that come out of Texas in the United States. A lot of part of the textbook racket is run by companies in Texas, of all places. So we have to be able to take this history seriously and personally, and understand our particular roles of accountability, and come to a place of solidarity with those who have suffered under the auspices of not only the Roman Catholic, and I'm just going to say it this way, contribution into European colonialism, but also Christianity in general and European culture in general. So that's a really big key part here. There was a time where I had contacted, again, a Roman Catholic priest that was part of the parish where my niece went to school. And I had been there, and I had known what the school was about. I had gone to the same school building many years ago, and my niece was now in that same building, and I was advocating for images of her, and images of historical African people, Black people, not only in the images around the classroom, but in history, things like that. So I made a meeting with the pastor of the parish in New Jersey, and I remember immediately being gaslit by this person, by this pastor, who was saying, he actually said things like, well, some of my best friends are Nigerians, you know, he actually said that to me, so as I'm trying to talk to him about the needs of my niece, a growing, powerful, and she's an amazing woman now, but a growing young woman, African woman, Black woman, girl at the time, he's giving me this story of why all the things they're doing are fine. As he was yakking and talking, I remember looking up onto the wall, and I saw a picture of the parish that he had, if you will, power over. And it dawned on me in that moment, and I'd heard this idea before, that this had nothing to do with souls and salvation. Part of this process of this Catholic Church being in the United States in New Jersey, the land of the Lenape, Lenapehoking, was real estate. When I think about New Orleans, I think about the names of this segments, the parcels of land. We call them parishes. That's because the Roman Catholic Church was very powerful in that area of the world, the southern United States. Now, within all of that, it has to be said that when the Roman Catholic Church instituted and wrote up the papal bulls defining the doctrine of discovery that Auntie Molly was talking about, that gave credence and political power, military power, behind the fantasy that Christian Europeans could take over any lands that were not Christian and European. All right. That's a very key piece here, and so when that happened, that not only empowered the Roman Catholic Church, but it empowered Christianity in general as an embedded part of European colonialism. This embedding, this fantasy supported by military power, guns and swords, affected the indigenous people of Turtle Island, South America, Asia, Africa, Australia, most any of the lands that they visited. The doctrine of discovery is a powerful foundation to the racist nature of European colonialism as we speak. All right. I just heard that our recording has stopped. Is everything okay?
Yeah, I don't know. I would like
Oh.
someone to start the recording back up.
Okay. Just checking in
Yes,
with our
thank
tech
you.
world. As
Art.
Zoom spoke to me. All right, great. So we have to understand this, and this is where our ideas of solidarity come from. And when we talk about solidarity, we have to talk about this not only by centering the experiences of Indigenous people and centering the stories of Auntie Molly and her people, her nations, and all the nations that are in the area of Canada, particularly pursuant to the Pope's visit, but also pursuant to the other places that the doctrine of discovery has created genocide for other peoples around the world. And again, it includes all those other land masses I was talking about. So we have to be able to be in a place where we're listening to those stories, that we're hearing grounded, embodied stories, traditional stories, historical stories, again, personal stories of how people have been affected by these things. Because again, this is not just, words on a page in a history book. These are real things that affected people as we live and breathe right now, as Auntie Molly lives and breathes right now, as Chise and I and Cynthia and Martin live and breathe right now. So not only do we have to hear those marginalized voices as we understand how the doctrine of discovery and how the Vatican and the Holy See and the political nature of all those kinds of things. And it's so key and important what Mari and others have said about, when someone is brought up to that level of power within a European colonial settler colonial state, that they go see the Queen and the Vatican. That's important. That's important because that's where they see the power. That's where they're seeing the power. They know that the power is there. Okay. So not only is it important for us to understand that history, that personal history that affects people, but we also have to, just like the Pope has to be accountable to saying that word genocide and then doing something about it. All those who have been empowered by that, all the European people, the white people who have been empowered by that, and through patriarchy, all the men who have been empowered by that, through patriarchy and racism within European colonialism, have to come to a place of accountability with how we relate not only to those powers, but to the voices of Indigenous people, the voices of African and Black people, the voices of people of color around the world. The nature of this is that those voices have to be heard, but then those groups that have been privileged by this, by the doctrine of discovery, and that's not everybody. We don't get to say, well, everybody has to do something about that. The people who have been oppressed by this, who have fought against the genocide, have already been doing something about it, even before 1492, when criminal Columbus sailed that ocean blue. Because Christian Europeans were already visiting the west coast of Africa. We're already setting up slave castles there. So we know that there's a level of accountability a level of learning, of education that has to happen at this time. Has to happen at this time. We are far beyond lip service. We are far beyond lip service now. We were never at the place of lip service, but part of European colonialism and part of the Christian context has always been to keep us at lip service, to always obfuscate and confuse the issue around who has accountability for creating the justice that we need, for listening to the voices of the oppressed and responding in a way systemically, not just, oh, I hear you, that was awful, that's really bad. But when you say genocide, you have to be accountable to genocide. You have to be accountable to the things that you gained from that genocide and to the voices, to the blood, to the bone, to the ancestors, and to their children who are living here today, speaking to you today about what is needed for a world of radical compassion, a world of love, a world of justice and freedom. There's a path to that. There is a path to that. And if we don't seek to put our feet on that path, on that road, then we're simply saying that we want to stay in complicity with the violence of the doctrine of discovery, which can be rescinded. And the Vatican has not yet done that. At times it is said, oh yeah, we kind of erased that a little while ago, but that's not true. And as we know by the work of Stephen Newcomb, who wrote Pagans in the Promised Land, and I just saw his documentary about the doctrine of discovery, I think within the last month, that talked about how the doctrine of discovery and the so-called discoveries and the colonial violence of criminal Columbus is embedded not only in federal legal precedent, but in state legal precedent in the United States of America settler colony. Okay? This is something that, as people who are looking to be allies, if you will, or accomplices, or just advocates of changing this world from one of oppression to one of freedom and liberation, we have to look at that. We have to hear that that's real. Yeah, it's not going to be in history books right now. Nope. Because it's still an active dynamic. And we have to be able to look at that and how that doctrine of discovery that is living and breathing as we speak and causing death and destruction and continued genocide in indigenous people and people of color around the world. We have to see about dismantling that. We have to hold people accountable. We have to use our voices. We have to use our bodies and show up in places that say, no, we're not going to stand for this anymore. That the radical compassion that lives in us as human beings, if that's what we actually seek to be, full human beings, is going to move us to action, move us to raising our voices, and to listening to these stories like Auntie Molly shared with us, and acting as though we know they are true, because they are. Okay? And that's how we should treat any survivor of genocide or assault or abuse. Is, yep, I believe you. And then we are responsible to helping make that world for that person a better and safer place. And part of this is not only the dismantling and rescinding of the doctrine of discovery, but of pulling out, kind of like I was talking about before earlier, pulling out all the bricks of the oppressive systems of patriarchy and racism, of ableism, of heterosexism, pulling all of those out so that we can actually hear the voices, actually feel the hearts of the oppressed, and actually know, as people who are privileged, and yes, I'm privileged as a man in society, even as an African man, I am still privileged as a man. And I have to look at that and pull away that part of myself that is part of that oppressive dynamic, so that I can see the humanity in the women around me more clearly, and in the queer folk around me more clearly. All right. So we have a responsibility in this moment, and we have to take that responsibility seriously. Thank you. And I pass back to Mari.
Thank you so much. You know, one of the primary things in Indigenous ways for re-indigenizing yourself is to walk your talk, not just pray it. That's why you see so many Indigenous people that when the oil is going to possibly burst into the water, or they're working with a pipeline and praying that that doesn't happen, they get on their feet and they stop it from happening. If we just sit around and wait for daddy to do it, it might not happen. That's not an integrated approach to life. Integration is to be integrated in your thoughts, your feelings, your movements, your actions, your words. So thank you, Akumba. That is phenomenal. Before we continue with our workshop, I want to introduce our modality of sharing circles that we are going to be going into next. Its purpose is to give voice to our needs and ideas, and knowing that any erroneous ideas that are presented in the circle eventually gain clarity from dialogue and reflection, so we can eventually come to a place of true understanding. So a lot of this is experiential as we share and do different things, but please listen, because we'll be holding a lot of things that might not be 100% congruent or true, even in our ideas. And don't be afraid of just letting it flow, whatever comes to you, because you're not being judged on anything. It's about all of us working this paradigm out together to find clarity. So through our different sharings, we will find clarity. And it's so important for us to be able to feel safe and be free to express in here. So just know that erroneous ideas will eventually gain clarity. And I will be passing to Cynthia and Michael that will start this sharing circle.
Thank you, Mari, and thank you, Akumba, Brother Akumba and Auntie Molly, for your powerful, moving stories. And I'll just start with some very brief introductions. So my name is Cynthia Roxanne Cunningham. I'm a member of Ancestors of the Four Directions, and I'm here in the ancestral lands of the Tona Oden and Pascal Yaqui people, and what is also called Tucson, Arizona. And I'm a sister of the Celtic, Slavic, Nordic, and Balkan people, and serve as a local counselor to my community. And I'm very grateful to be here, to be able to be of service to this very important work of truth telling and collective healing of racial trauma and justice. And I would like to call upon my esteemed colleague, Michael, to introduce himself.
Good morning, everybody. Michael Oden, and I am a behavior strategist, and I work with families and children and teenage boys, and to make sense of their nonsense. I am new at this, and I'm a student. So, you know, the knowledge and the experience and the information that I am hearing constantly every week gives me more knowledge that I can grow and learn and make and contribute to this planet and what we need to do to get our topic in the direction that everyone can benefit from. So I'm here to help. I'm here to learn, and so let me know what I can do.
Thank you, Michael. And I uploaded into the chat our guidelines, but I will be going through them. Let's see if I can share screen. Well, I'll just go. Oh, here we go. Bear with me. Okay. And these guidelines were put forth to create a safe holding container for a wide variety of perspectives, and really encourage people to share from the heart and share their truth and how they're being affected by today's stories and really processing the information. And so for those who would like to speak, if you could just click on in the reactions menu, raise hands so we know that you would like to. And introducing yourself with your first name only, just leaving aside affiliations, no self-promotion, and speaking one at a time. I think we'll have about 1.5 minutes for each individual, allowing a little extra time for feedback. And really sharing from the heart of your own experience and steering away from commenting about other people's share in the circle. You know, the goal here is not to be a debater to prove a point, but is really to share your own experience. And when others are sharing, to actively hold space and listen with love and compassion, and being open to hearing different perspectives and showing respect to those others. And when you hear the ring of the bell, which I'm going to grab in 1 second, please begin to start wrapping up. That's a signal that it's you have about 30 seconds. And
Also, the general topic is, what does what has been spoken about mean to me personally, or what does it bring up for you? So that is the general topic, unless you have something else along that topic to share. Thank you.
And Michael, if you could assist me by calling on the first person and unmuting. Thank you.
So, yeah, I think I'm unmuted. Hi, my name's Mary Gellerman, and I'm a friend of Mari's from Topanga. And I've been a women's and gay liberation activist my whole adult life. And I didn't know I was going to say this, but I was really excited to move to America because there was a living tradition here, and decimated though it was by genocide. I was like, it felt so amazing to be sharing the soil with this, with that living history. And on my property, we try to honor the Tonga people that held the land before us, and only think of ourselves as stewards of the land. And sorry, it's very emotional for me. So I'm very aware of my privilege. I'm in a white anti-racist therapist group that's meeting shortly after this one ends. And just as I call men out on not listening to women, I call myself and white people out on not listening and privileging. I feel so strongly about that the only way forward is to privilege listening to the experience of different oppressed groups, and for the whiteness in people or the maleness in people to just, I thought a very rude phrase, shut the F up and just listen. That's what I wanted to say.
Well, thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Mary, for your honesty.
And do we have anyone else? Cynthia, is that how you want to pick someone randomly, or do they want to volunteer on their own?
We're hoping this is a talking circle, kind of, you guys. So please share, please come in.
And we have Jeffrey.
Now, I trust you that I am not an electronic geek, and I don't know how to I have not been able to make my video work. I admit I can see you, but I know that you can't see me.
At least we can hear you.
You're familiar with the phrase, your voice is your second face. So I'll ask you to go from that. where I find myself wanting to begin. And I'm very glad that you offered the reminder that we're speaking from the I, from my experience, my perception. And I'll just be trusting that there are many others who share similar to my experience of my own awakening and process. I was raised in the frickin' capitalist system to be a brain dead idiot in the public miseducation system. And because of that, out of high school, I was stupid enough to sign up for 3 years in the Marine Corps. Well, I did my 3 years in hell, but thank God I didn't do any real hell. I did no combat, just did guard duty and administration. But I learned the basic character of that American military economic structure. I consider it quite satanic and lying and fascist. And I see that the whole American system is based on that. But then I had an awakening. I was graced with an out-of-body experience. And I mean, not just floating on the ceiling, but I was like, I was being pulled out of my body, which was sleeping on the bed. And I asked, whoa, where am I being pulled to? And the response, the telepathic response that I got was, whoa, I'm being pulled toward the sun, not just the surface sun, but the sun behind the sun, which I had never heard of or considered before that. But I instantly interpreted that to mean, whoa, I'm going to God. Whoa. And then this voice said to me, you're leaving your body behind. Are you ready for that? And my spontaneous response was, no. And I was right back down in my body on the bed, waking up. But that entire transcendent experience was more convincingly, obviously, indubitably real, reality-based than anything that I had ever experienced through my physical body and physical senses prior to that point. So in other words, 30 seconds I hear, in other words, I had been shown that that body back down there on the bed is not who I really am. And of course, many spiritual scriptures state this, that we are not the body. But what does that mean? We don't know what that means until we are graced with the direct experience of it. Oh, I didn't get the 30-second warning. Huh? Okay. Well, good thing you stopped me.
Thank you. That was great.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Sorry, I did ring the bell, but thank you for being equitable and sharing the time. And we have Janet.
Tego sewa koego Janet Jungiat. I am Waxgalawage, Bear Clan from Haudenosaunee. I just wanted to make a couple comments real quick. One thing about 1492, when they came here, the original boat people, they were asked to live in accordance with the two-row wampum, which basically is all about living and let living, and also because, you know, these people are in our house now, that they should live as we do. Since they didn't, they were asked to, that there was plenty, we still shared the land. We said there was plenty of land to share. So I want to equate that treaty, that wampum belt, is still alive. It never died. And that's part of what my message is in carrying what I feel my job is, what I've done most of my life, is to carry that message. And that as far as this call to consciousness, that includes, you know, to living off the land in symbiosis. So, you know, to restore the ecosystems and the animal systems, the insect systems, the fish, and, you know, all of that. And the one other thing that I really want to stress is not just the importance of putting the truth back into the history books, but also, you know, including maybe, you know, getting more ways that Native people can begin to teach the world, especially in Turtle Island, because that's all I know at this point is Turtle Island, to teach the way the non-natives teach in their schools. Well, why can't we teach the non-natives our patience, So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi,
Shauna?
hi, my name is Shauna, and I'm really grateful to be here. Let me get my camera where I can see myself so I can orient myself. I really appreciated the topic that was brought up around the word genocide and how important it is that the truth of that is spoken. I'm 1/4 Armenian, and my ancestors survived the Armenian genocide before World War II, where there wasn't a lot of media coverage. And that was 1915, and 106 years later, the US President Biden, April in 2021, recognized the 1915 mass killing and deportation of 1 million Armenians in Turkey as genocide. And I can tell you that that has brought healing to my family. There were also 29 countries that also recognized it as genocide. And I hope that the Indigenous people can get various countries to formally acknowledge the genocide. I think that will bring credibility to their cause. And so it's not just the Pope, the actual countries recognize it. And a lot of people don't know about the Armenian genocide. There is a movie called The Promise that came out a few years ago. The Armenian people, I hear, recognize Mount Ararat as their original homeland. I don't know if you've heard of Akmak crackers. That's Armenian cracker bread. But on a serious note, there were horrible atrocities against Armenian people. And many people don't know this, but many of them were forced into the Turkish army, and if they were caught speaking their language, their tongue was cut out. And some Armenians have the last name that means tongueless ones. And they were refugees that escaped either into Aleppo, Syria for safety, or north close into Russia. So I thank you for being able to speak for my ancestors. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Okay.
Thank you, Shauna.
And do we have any other people would like to speak and share? If not, if any of the people who have spoken, do we have time for another round? Mari?
Yes.
Okay.
Generally, if you can keep on the topic also, and I know that there are, I do want to address Jeffrey really quickly. Jeffrey, I know that in all religions and spiritual ways of doing things, many people have had out-of-body experiences, such as I have. And it does really focus on the fact that we are not the body entirely. And in indigenous ways, and in many, many religions all over the world, there is an understanding of sometimes if you're being brought back to the sun as an example, that the sun, sun, was an original Egyptian concept that was pre-Christian, that meant, maybe Chise can speak on this, but a bigger holy thing, like there were sun worshipers there, and so the sun was kind of the original light. So when they say to let there be light, so it's not into getting into the discussion of Jesus or this or that versus this other thing, but there are many ways to see this, and it is a big topic. So getting back to genocide and racism and the doctrine of discovery, I will let that go and let someone else come into the talking. I don't know if Chise wants to say anything about that, but otherwise let us go back into that topic.
And Jeffrey, did you want to respond?
Thank you, please. So I am aware of the focused earth-oriented topic of the discussion and the sharing. And we look at these aspects of history, which is apparently a continuing stream of people's belief in the ideologies and cultural trainings and beliefs that seem to divide us, rather than being mindful, soulfully mindful of the inherent inner nature of our true, pure, timeless identity, in which we all are timelessly united. That is the cure for the endless divisiveness arising from false-oriented, ego-oriented belief and identity. That's why I went there, and I think that awakening is the cure to all that we have been seeing happening throughout a divisive human history. And of course, religion has not filled the bill. Religion has continued to divide us. So that is the wrong orientation. That's an egocentric, ego-projected, patriarchal orientation still. And of course, that doctrine of discovery out of the Vatican, and that certainly is a part of all of this, isn't it? False religion.
And I saw we had a question in the chat. I think that was from you, Jeffrey, for Shauna. And what was the last name that meant tongueless?
I don't know. It was during the recognition of the genocide that I heard that. My personal family's last name was originally Hagopian, which meant son of Jacob. And my grandfather, who came over to America when he was 14, didn't want to sound Armenian, how many of the immigrants did, so he changed the name to Jacob. And I also want to say, you know, the Turkish government has not recognized the Armenian genocide. Only other countries have. And so that's why I say, yes, let's have many countries recognize what happened to the indigenous people of Turtle Island or Turtle Island as a genocide. It does bring healing, and that's something that still needs to happen for the Armenian people, is the formal apology from the Turkish government. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. And I just wanted to share a comment in chat. And I believe this is from Deborah. This says, she doesn't want to seem like she's not participating, but as a white woman living in Canada, she feels like it's a privilege to be here and to listen, and would prefer to just be listening. Yeah, Kumba.
Yeah, if I may, thank you. And yeah, I just want to acknowledge for Deborah from Canada, thank you for saying that, you know, out loud in words. And as we have been kind of saying, it is important for privileged populations, which includes European people, white people, which includes white men, men in general. But within European colonialism, particularly white men, it includes Christians, in this context of the doctrine of discovery, to be able to listen, to be able to step back, and to be able to just take it in and be uncomfortable if that's what's happening with what's going on at that moment, what's being said, and to just learn to take it in. So I appreciate that you acknowledge that you wanted to participate, but yeah, we're just taking a listening mode, and that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. I also wanted to say quickly that within this context of the doctrine of discovery, part of my perspective on this is that it is my job to question, and I think some of it is inspired by what Jeffrey said earlier and the context that you put your experience in, which is fine. But for me as an African person born, in Turtle Island, who has brought forth my own awareness and work within an African context, I have to question every time I think that there may have been a Christian template put over things for me. So African people in the United States have this great tradition of within the Christian church of being very charismatic, and we get taken over by the Spirit and things like that, and we dance, we move, we sing, and it's always been said, yeah, the Holy Spirit is upon us, right? But I started to question really seriously, what if that was the ancestors and we didn't name them? We have this template put upon us of Christianity that now we're using to communicate what happens to us. It becomes the story, the context for the story, the frame, and I'm going to do this, the frame for our story, as opposed to the frame for our story, or the framelessness, the timelessness of our story. Because once we connect with them ancestors, we are timeless. We are not tied to the historicity of a book, nor somebody else's story about us. So even if we say, as people who are oppressed, particularly underneath the doctrine of discovery in European colonialism, somebody says, oh, that was God, that was Jesus who did that. I say, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I don't know if God had anything to do with me. I think my ancestors were protecting me from the violence upon which God rode in on. So I have to be able to look beyond the confines of that doctrine, the confines of that story, and say, wait a minute, no, my ancestors were looking out for me. I danced because my ancestors danced. If I'm in, if even if I'm in that Christian church tradition, and I'm not, and say, what if that was us and not what they say it was? Because again, we were not handed a Bible for our own liberation. We were handed it for cultural genocide. And many of us still hold it to this day. Thank you.
Thank you, Kumbwa. And Janet, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question. I mean, no disrespect. This is done in my own ignorance. So I heard that because the Pope admitted genocide, but did it over the air in a plane, that somehow that doesn't have any weight or as much weight as if he did it on the land. And there was mention of admiral laws, of the sea and this and that. And so could anybody, say anything on this that might, give me some knowledge or, help me out here? No, thank you.
Auntie Molly, would you like to field that?
Yes, I would.
Thank you.
The one part that I did see was his departure. He was on the ground, he was on the airplane, but he was still on Canadian soil. And to me, that was very important. he was on Canadian soil when he said that, when he said it. And as I had said before, he speaks 7 languages, and he didn't know the word, the English word for what he meant. He said that he had been describing it. He had been asking people to explain it to him, but of course his advisors and the lawyers and all those concerned with him not saying it, he did find the word. Someone did tell him the word in English was genocide. His feet were on the ground. He was still in Canada when he said it. And I didn't watch it all week, but I did see that particular one as he was getting ready to depart. And as I'd stated here, and anytime that I'm asked, that was the only word that had any meaning for me, was just to say the word. We can take it from here, and we must bring it to them and hold them to that word that they understand and know what genocide means and how it has affected us and still affects us today. And I'd like to bring something to mind as well. And that concerns the immigrants that are displaced through the wars that are happening throughout the world, etc. And each and every one who comes here as a refugee receives better housing than most Canadians, and definitely way better housing than any Native person on a reserve. They're given plenty of money to live on. They each get a cell phone and have all of the amenities that they soon come to take for granted. And then on the news comes a story about the dirty water, the horrid living conditions on the reserves, the plumbing or lack thereof, sanitation, education, also the lack thereof. So all of these things are put in front of the people who are coming here, and automatically they elevate themselves above us because of the doctrine of discovery. It must go. It really must go. The reason that it was founded as the world has been conquered in every manageable way that humans can do it. And everyone is scrambling over what resources are left here. But it's the feeling that the indigenous people of this land and other colonialized lands have been put absolutely at the bottom of the totem pole and below that. And so we need to take steps to end this, because it's up to us. I'm a gatekeeper because I'm an old lady. I'm a gatekeeper. I'll hold the way open. I'll hold the gate open for you. I'm not doing the work you are. It's you and succeeding generations that are going to make this happen. And I really do count on you for that. But I've been here to witness these things. I'm very, very honored to have an opportunity to have been taught how to think, how to feel, how to express. That comes equally from the European ancestor as it did from my indigenous ancestor, because they loved and respected each other so much. And as much as I feel for other races who have felt this mistreatment, this is ongoing. What I'm talking about here, about the living conditions when people coming here automatically are elevated above the existing people in the country, the indigenous people say. there's something wrong there, because they also take care of their education. They get to go on to higher education. That's really not possible in the Indigenous world. You might hear rumblings, but very, very little rumblings that go on about higher education, etc. So I just would like to say we will simply need to have the same things as every other person coming here to this country, you know, and that's decent housing, clean water, and the right to education and respect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Auntie Molly. And I would just want to check in with Mari how we're doing on time.
We're probably over time, but let's still go with Jenna. Weeva hasn't spoken yet, and
Okay.
and Martin has somebody in the chat that he's gonna probably present, Janet.
Okay.
And I know that Shauna wants to speak again, so we can always cut the other one down, but let's make them brief real quick, and so we can get on to the next two speakers after that, and then we will have another speaking circle after that. So go ahead.
Okay. Jenna Weeva, welcome. Can you unmute yourself?
Oh, yeah. Hello, how do you hear me? How do you hear me? Hello. Okay, I'm Genoveva from Bulgaria. I'll be very shortly. I'm from Bulgaria. For us, before when Hitler killed many Jewish people in Auschwitz, Germany, was killed thousands of people, and we are the victim of the European colonialism in Hungary, in all Europe, if you can imagine. And yeah, we have survival also. Before 14 years ago, Bulgarian government changed into all Muslim community in Bulgaria from Muslims names to the Christian names. So like a short example, I'm born with the Muslim name, Genoveva Mechova, Ramadanova, but government changed my name to Genoveva Sukirova. Do you understand? So I'm afflicted because I don't know who I am now. I'm 40 years old, and I still feel myself lost and road, you know, but I don't know. And now I should discover myself, rediscover myself, and rebuild my identity step by step again. This makes me very lost and without road. So that's why I want to say my opinion by peaceful way, like Martin Luther King, because all of us, we are human, no matter you are from Africa, Armenia, Turkish, England, everywhere. We are the human rights, no matter your religion, color, or etc. This is my humble message to all of you. I wish this is colonial treatment to stop it, because like a result of this policy, I lost my father and my aunt. That's why I have autism. God bless you, peace and love.
Thank you from our sister in Bulgaria. And Martin, do we have something from chat that would be important to share?
There's a few things in here. Sorry, I thought that you were doing it, so I really stopped paying attention. Thank you, Molly, for the correction. I saw the beginning of the Pope's arrival, but not the ending. I didn't know he was on the ground when he said genocide. So it was misinformation on social media that said he was in the air when he said that word. Thank you. You want me to read all of these?
No, we don't have time for all, but maybe some of them. because we are over time. I think just to share from Deb Ellis, who wanted to clarify that for her was not a feeling of not wanting to take up airspace when I and my ancestors have taken up all of the air and water and land for a long time. Time to sit and listen. My heart is broken hearing your stories. Just cannot wrap my head around what humans are capable of doing to each other. Sometimes it's overwhelming. Was listening to CBC talking about our wetlands, our Mother Earth, and we're so disconnected from of each other, ourselves, and the earth. Just taking a moment to grieve, feel, and take action. Thank you. Thank you, Deb.
Yes, let's return to our speaking circle, and Akumbwa, could you take over as host right now?
That is fine. I will just very quickly simply call in Chise to speak next. We thank all the people who have responded and shared from their hearts into the circle, and we'd like to now give the space to Chise for her perspective on this important topic. Thank you, Chise.
Thank you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jise Adetunde is how I say my name when I go before my Egun, my ancestors. I grew up walking around on Tongva land, and I'm really so happy and feel so privileged to be here. I come from a multitude of of traditions. You know, on my father's side, there is some Native American tradition. On my mother's side, we are deeply steeped in traditional Ifa and what we would call hoodoo. My grandfather was essentially a juju man. And I would like to speak, I think, when I think about genocide, especially, and when I think about atonement, because those are the things that popped out for me when Mari and I were discussing what was going to happen today. Atonement, what does that mean? And genocide, really, what does that mean? Genocide is not just the disappearance of the body, it's also the disappearance of the cultural mind and the cultural mindset and the cultural connectivity to the land. The conversation that a people has with the land that they stand upon through their ancestors is essentially one of the first things that was attacked. If it was not important to attack that, there would have been no boarding schools. These people understood that, you know, in order to, who was it that said, I want to, kill the Indian and save the person, as though that's a possibility. What kind of foolishness is that? But when you start slicing people up like that, and quite frankly, it is a corporate and capitalist misideation that causes that kind of foolishness to be utterable, in my opinion. What I'm looking at when I think about the atonement and when I think of atonement, I really think the etymology of the word, at-one-ment. How do you repair what has been broken? My background is in education at all levels. And one of the things that I wanted to bring today was I wanted to speak about method, because I think many of us know what's wrong. But because of the way the conversation has been controlled by the people who have been engaged in social engineering for over 100 years, I think we are meant to be left kind of holding the psychological bag and thinking that there's nothing we can do. And I wanted to speak to actions that can be taken. Some of those actions can be taken alone. Other actions can be taken with people or are required with people. One of the things that I would like to say is, I would like to challenge the way the conversation is conceived. We speak, through history. When I am very aware that when I'm speaking to my daughter, I'm speaking to my grandchildren and their children. And that is something that is part of our Ifa tradition that it may not be as popular in the general population, but I think in most older traditions, people are aware that they're speaking to their grandchildren when they're speaking to their children. If you have not been interrupted, you understand this. You are teaching things to your children so that your grandchildren will know them. You are establishing your child's relationship to the earth so that your grandchildren will have a foothold in the earth that they were born into. Having said that, I took my daughter out of school when she was in the 6th grade because of certain things that were happening. The last straw was when one particular white teacher said that slavery wasn't that bad. And there were things that happened to that, but I was like, well, this educated woman, I don't have time for this. We are, and neither does the earth, because and I'd like to these dots, see we are in an ecological crisis. And I would submit that this ecological crisis is born directly out of our crisis with each other. The failure to atone with each other, the failure to open up that can of get right, as they say in my community, is what leads to disassociation and alienation from the earth, because the earth doesn't lie. In Jamaica and parts of Africa, they say, water have no enemy. Water doesn't have any enemies. Everyone needs water. And I would consider that everyone needs land to stand on as well. And that land and the water have no enemies. And the way we conceive of that is there's truth in the water and there's truth in the land. There's truth in the air that you breathe. When you are not living within the construct of that truth, then you get alienation. And what do we have? Right now, we have a crisis going on with people who are, look at the crystal methamphetamine crisis. Before that, it was cocaine and crack. Misuse of natural substances to escape or to anesthetize the pain that has been caused by the disassociation. In order to connect the dots and to repair these things, we begin by repairing with each other. What does that look like? The first thing is you tell the truth. That's the first thing. You tell the truth first to the children. My mother always says, water runs downhill. You tell your children the truth. Okay. So these boarding schools existed so that the truth of how to live on the land could not be told to these native children in their native tongues. And basically you had a set of people who are adhering to the doctrine of discovery saying, we are going to interrupt your lineage and this flow of water into the next generation. And we are going to insert our poison, because I am calling it poison, because it's anything that alienates a human being from the land and the water has to be regarded as poison. We are part of this earth. To the extent that we are not part of this earth, we need anesthesia, we need alcohol, we need drugs of some kind, we need some kind of denatured substance so that we don't feel, so that we are made not to feel, so that we can numb ourselves to the disassociation, the pain caused by the disassociation from the earth and our ancestors. To that, I would like to say, one of the methods that I see, since my daughter is so, I accuse my daughter of renting me out all the time, sending her friends to me. One of the things that I see is the first thing would be to pick a child. It doesn't have to be a child that's a minor. It could be just somebody who's below the age of 28, which is in Africa is a child, before the first Saturn return. Pick a child to speak to pass something on to. This is a practice. You pass on some valuable information into the next generation. and pick an elder. Method 2, pick an elder who you think has valuable information to pass on, to glean information from. Those are 2 actions. Other actions for me would be, I have a list of books, because one thing that most of us are here because we know that we've been lied to on some level. This is the 1619 project. I'm sorry, it's probably backwards. And it was edited by a sister by the name of Nicole Hannah-Jones. And it talks about the origin of Black slavery in the United States, but it is not just that. I think a lot of people who have been oppressed can find within it the methodologies that were used to oppress their own people, whichever group of people they happen to come from. The other thing is, I used to teach a class in revolutionary literature. There's a book by Anthony Arnove, Howard Zinn and Anthony Arnove, called Voices of a People's History. It is a primary source book, a book full of primary source historical information on what was going on for the past, what has been going on since criminal Columbus, as Akuma likes to say. When I speak of primary source information, I am speaking directly to eyewitness accounts of historic events by people who were actually there. I taught with this book because most American diseducation books about history are filtered down so badly you can't tell what was going on, and they're not right lies. And that brings me to another book called As My Teacher Told Me by James W. Loewen, Loewen, in which he challenges the veracity of most of those history books that are used around the United States, possibly in other countries, that come out of the Texas book mills. I'm saying all this to say that at some point, one of the primary things that we need to deal with is telling the truth and the methodologies of telling those truths, how we disseminate what it is that we have come to know and that we have seen and rightfully remember because we have lived through history that our children have not. One of the most serious thrusts of the invasion is to cut people off from memory. In order to take control of the environment, we have to take control of, we have to reclaim our memory, and we have to take control of the narrative. I think it was George Orwell that says, who controls the present controls, who controls the present controls the past, or who controls the past, and who controls the past controls the future. Okay. And that control, even though it has been effected at gunpoint, they don't have enough bullets to match the words that all of us have. There's just not enough ordnance to stop us. And that's one of the things that we need to know. There's not enough ordnance to stop me when I ripple out through my child into all of her little cronies, and when I speak to my students, about the veracity of certain aspects of history. I will give an example, and then I will pass this to someone else. In the book, The Voices of a People's History, Howard Zinn, who was a historian and who taught at Spelman, a historically Black university, and Howard, and also an HBCU, he was a bombardier in World War II. And he realized at a certain point that history was not being taught correctly. So one of the things he wanted to do was use primary source history to teach. Within the construct, within the the compendium, because it's a compendium of lots of letters, one of which is the reconstruction of Columbus's diary by his cousin, Bartolomé de las Casas. The book starts with that. And it tells in essentially Columbus's own words, how they landed and how they took advantage of the natives and started passing the women around for cigarettes. Another entry in the book is Mark Twain writing as Samuel Clemens to Theodore Roosevelt, cussing him out about the United States taking over the Philippines. So he's literally talking, it's a nasty letter about what are we doing over here and why are we bothering these people who are sovereign. The book goes on like that because I think part of the problem is we don't know where to go to find these sources of history. And if we don't have this in us, then we can't pass this on. To the degree that we are able to pass on the truth, our next generation cannot be lied to. Our next generation does not feel alienated. Our next generation does not need alcohol and methamphetamine or what have you to dull the pain. And I would pass it back to you. Okumba, thank you.
Thank you, Chise. Thank you so deeply for that sharing. Amongst many other powerful things you've said, I just want to remind us of your talk about repair, and and to mention that, our traditional ways of being, because we talk about, moving beyond, we're not our bodies, but that the traditions and how our bodies show up, how I dance, how I sing, that's how we've been human. And the memory that you talk about, Chise, is for us to remember how we've been human. Our connection to the land, as you say, so important. And I call it a process of disintegration, what European colonialism has done. It actually pulled us up out of our sovereign sections of earth, if you will, just like we pull up a plant out of the earth, out of the soil. Our roots can't get down there anymore. We're not going to survive the same way. And like you're saying, we need to survive on other fertilizers to somehow keep our sense of humanity. But clearly, I appreciate that you've focused on at-one-ment, atonement, and action. And it would be great to hear from people as we open up our sharing circle, with the help of Cynthia and Michael again, to talk about that, to make sure that we remember you said that. You talked about at-one-ment and you talked about action. These things that we can do, so pass on valuable information, supporting elders, listening to elders, books, read, learn, grow. Some of those are my words. Our memory, and tell the truth, right? Tell the truth. And I'm just going to add to that, hear the truth and act like you heard it. So if we could go to Cynthia and Michael again and glean from, again, our group, what's coming up for people at this moment? That would be amazing. Thank you again, Chise.
Thank you, Sister Chise, Brother Ukumbwa. And yes, so we want to be talking about at-one-ment, atonement, taking action, steps, what kind of steps forward. And I invite our participants to, we have a hand. Wonderful. Let's see.
One of the things that I wanted to bring up, and this is
thanks, Martin,
an idea of perspective that I'm still playing around with. First of all, the biggest thing a liar is afraid of, right, is the truth. So you just make that simple point right then and there. They don't want all of the things that we're talking about and what I want to question about, to Chise, Mari, Kumbwa, Molly, anyone, is this idea that on my journey over the years, I have been led on a certain path, and I am starting to unfold a lot of the great mysteries in awe. And I think that it is important for people to understand what they're missing, what they haven't seen, what they can see. So I would start, I don't know, Molly, maybe you want to talk about some of that, the joy of the mystery per se.
Yes, thank you so much. There's one thing to tell you right now, and that is I've been here kind of conceptually trying to hear, and now I just finally got my hearing aid adjusted. And I'm sorry that I missed your last remark. I think that you're a very careful listener, and I would, if you don't mind saying the last sentence or so again.
No, it was just a question of place and time through my learning and understanding of the great mysteries, spirit itself, that has been kept away from me and my ancestors as well over time. And what I'm refining those connections along the way, I think I think it would be a helpful conversation to hear experiences of that joy that have been kept from us, so that people can see what can be possible, what is possible, the truth. And I just want
What a wonderful thought and a marvelous point of discussion, very pertinent to where we're at today. Thank you for that. I really, really appreciate it. It's something that you hunger for, and I went in many, many different directions for a long time in my life to find out what was really meant for me. Even though I had been taught from birth until 14 years old, I was stood up as an elder at that age. I was given my grandmother's traditional name, was very sacred and holy, like she was. And I was given my life work, which was to be of service to the people. Your life will be a life of service to the people. And because much has been given to you, much will be expected. So it is. And after that, from every elder that I ever sat down and chatted with, always came to this point, oh, and you're one of those who are never going to retire. So here I am at 82, still very passionate about our culture, our traditions, and particularly our spirituality. Because in order for me to suppress the horrible memories of the concentration camp called residential school, I repressed a lot of the previous knowledge that I'd been taught as well. Until I became, I was 28 when I started the journey of healing from the residential schools. Horrible things that happened there, and I witnessed and people dying, children dying around me and whatnot. They would simply disappear. We all know what that means. We've seen a lot of it in countries by the hundreds of thousands that they've made people disappear and whatnot. The desire to know your roots is so strong, and you search for it, and then you just become quiet, and it starts to come to you. I prayed for the answer, and thankfully it came. through the kindness of family and relatives and my elders. I was always a very obedient child to my elders, so I always listened to them very carefully from the time that I could remember, probably about the same time as I learned to talk, etc. I was very young. And the first thing that happened was I had to let go of the residential school experience because I was so full of rage and so full of hate for the Catholic Church. You have no idea that it almost consumed me. I couldn't be happy in my beautiful home, my own car, my 2 kids, my cat, the dog, and all the convenience you could have. None of that was meant anything to me, and it stayed like that for a while until I was able to find. I'll say the word. It was forgiveness. I went to pray and I couldn't remember one single solitary word of any prayer that I'd ever learned in the Catholic Church or anywhere else. And then finally, by the end of the day, this took place all one day, from early in the morning until it was about 4 in the afternoon. And what started was I had rheumatoid arthritis and I had to crawl around the house that day on my hands and knees because I was suffering so much. And finally, at the end of the day, I said, I need to start to forgive them. How could anybody treat children like that if they didn't know any better, or if anybody had ever been kind to them? So that began the journey for me. And from that time up until this time, just because you say you forgive this action, there are so many different steps and so many different stages in your healing process that you need to say, I do forgive that. Even now, in the depth of healing that I've done for my spiritual growth, I still need to go to that place where I have to say, yes, I forgive that. If they knew any better, they wouldn't have done that to anyone. And I feel very blessed to have had the grounding that I came into the world with from my ancestors. My grandfather was a medicine man, a clairvoyant, and trained me how to do a lot of different things before he left the world shortly after he did his last work with me in 1954. And so I honor the ancestral teachings on my maternal side, so that I decided then to pursue my father's lineage of spirituality, of which turned out to be the Sundance. So I've learned that practice and incorporated into the indigenous practices that belong to my mother's lineage since time immemorial. Ask, pray for it. It's amazing. My relative just passed away last week that set my foot on the right path, and his name was Johnny Johnson, and may he rest in peace forever. He said the magic sentence to me, and off I went with 90 days. I was ready. I was in the arbor. My life has been like magic ever since, because I learned to let go, and I learned to forgive, and I keep doing it until it no longer is part of my consciousness. It's not easy every day, because sometimes I like to be naughty, but the thing of it is, it's worth every step that you have to take to find that person. That it could be one word that it just opens up the doorways and the gateways, and everything flows from there. And every victory counts. Everything that you shared today is a victory, and it counts. If we've learned one small new thing from each other today, that expands our consciousness, and we spread that from ourselves to our immediate family, to the community, and out it goes. And I had a very in-depth feeling experience here last Friday. Pardon me, it was 2 weeks ago Friday. I was called to court, and it was a hearing for Indigenous land use and our occupation of the land in our Statlium territory in what we call British Columbia. Now, I wrote a book 12 years ago. It was called Granny and Papa. And it's a living portrait. And that was taken as a document in evidence that what I had written about the history and the cultural, traditional, and spiritual way of our people was true. Because it was a living portrait. It is a living portrait. That was what I experienced with my grandparents' teachings and the forebears before them, and the gift that they gave me to carry it through. So it's a beautiful pathway. You have to want it. Nobody can hand it to you. And it's up to you to go each step of the way to get to the point that you feel whole, like a whole human being, because all of you is connected to from your mental, emotional, and physical. You go through the steps to release yourself from the hurts and harms that have been done to you. The hardest part was to also release yourself from the hurts and harms that you did to others. Yeah, okay. And that takes a little bit longer. And but it's worth every effort that we put into it, because then that opens the spiritual realms to us and helps us to stay on the good red road. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you today. And thank you for your question. I appreciate it very much. What myth, as we say.
Thank you, Auntie Molly. You're such an inspiration to be able to forgive after all that you've been through. And I'd like to open it up to any participants who wanted to share. Let's see. Shauna, in the chat, you indicated you wanted to share. Are you still with us?
Oh. There it goes. I wasn't able to unmute myself for a while. Thank you for allowing me to say something again so I can feel complete. This has been so rich and so valuable to me to hear all these things. And I do think about often of the drugs and alcohol, the wounding of the people in the United States and Turtle Island, and also of the despair because of the past. And so I wanted to bring that up first. The second thing I wanted to bring up is that I realized this is to claim an action that we can do. So I acknowledge that President Biden recognized the Armenian genocide. And I do feel that the United States is beginning to look at its history, the reality of its history, but we have a long ways to go. So I don't know. I know that our government, and with the help of Deb Holland, has formally recognized what has happened in the boarding schools. But as far as I don't know that there's been formal recognition as it being a genocide. I don't know that. So for my action, I would like to state that I will write a letter to President Biden, thanking him personally for acknowledging and recognizing the Armenian genocide. And I would like to ask him and our government to recognize the genocide in any form that has been taken in the United States. Because I acknowledge the African Americans have suffered greatly, as well as the indigenous people. And so I will just ask if you will, and the government be willing to formally recognize any genocides that have happened in the United States. And I will send an email to Mari when I've completed that within the 90 days. Thank you for inspiring me to do this.
Beautiful. Thank you, Shauna. And do we have any other participants who would like to share on the topic? Janet. If you could
Yeah. I just want to share a little bit of my experience as it relates to the topic. One of the things that's really frustrating for me now, probably more so than before when I was younger, the fact that my mother is Native, my father is not. I don't even know where my father's from, but I had the honor and the privilege of my mother's people to take me in because they say you are what your mother is. So that helped me with my identity. But now I feel more of, I feel like I have more of an identity crisis than ever. And why I say that is because when I was young growing up, before I got roped into the Indian scene, I was pretty much a natural environmentalist. As I grew, I learned about what happened to me because I was in foster care. My mother was a residential kid. She went through a lot of suffering that I did not know about. But I want to just try to get to my point. I've seen this in recovery. I think it's more than just being aware that of this spirituality. It does go back to action, because the biggest frustration for me now is that as I was growing up in the movement, I tried very hard to do land back, and I went up against a Puerto Rican group living up in the woods in upstate New York, my own land, that had the support of the government as to why they could have that land, and they had guns. I never picked up a weapon in my life, and I'm treated as a terrorist because I did community organizing and did public speaking as a young adult. And I can't even get to the res anymore without the state troopers. As soon as something happens on the res, they come out from the woodwork and they follow me wherever I am. I could be 3,000 miles from my own res. And so the problem I see is when I got my head together, I went through a bout of alcohol, and I got my head together, and there's nothing to go to. Once you get your head together, it's like spiritually you have that choice. You can go stat quo, or you can go and try to be like Yeshua or something, but there's no land base. And the culture's so divided, disseminated and divided, that I even have people arguing over whether I'm an incorporated native or not, on top of people saying, well, you're half white, so you're not, you know, but my mother spoke fluent Haudenosaunee. I was in foster care with a brother who was much darker than me, you know, and I defended him to the back because I seen the racism worse than what I got, you know. So I think that's like, I just, you know, I'm trying to do the experiential thing because that was brought up. So I'm trying to bring my experience into all this, but I think it's really important that there are other choices besides, once we get our head together. I mean, all we got is consumerism and capitalism, you know. How do we change that? That's like the big task, the really big task. And I think that would take generations. Anyway, thank you. I'm really happy to have been part of this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any of the speakers want to, if anyone wants to comment on anything, feel free to jump in. Yeah, Auntie Molly.
I would just like to say, keep coming back here. It will ease your concerns, and you never know how it will come about. But I feel that you're looking for a teacher, and that will help you to be with people who feel the way you do about the situations that are surrounding us. And I just like to say, keep coming back. You're much appreciated here. Thank you.
Yes,
Oh, sorry, Mari.
Oh, I just wanted to say something quickly, that I concur with Auntie Molly, and that's what we're doing here together. And so there is discussion about the trajectory of that, but we are here to take that into consideration, be a family for each other, and start moving into that question that you just asked, Janet. So with that in mind, please, let's stick together. We're the people that are interested in really knowing what's happening and really propagating the dissemination of the heartfelt connection to source, land, and our own primordial knowledge and understanding, and how to create that on the planet. So thank you so much, Janet.
I saw a hand up, but it Michael Coles, as you had your hand up earlier, I don't know if you wanted to join in the discussion. And if you could unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. Just finally on YouTube for me. Speaking to you from the Coast Salish Sea. I currently reside on McEwen, what is known as McEwen territory, the mouth of the Fraser River. I was brought into this world in Toronto, what is known as Toronto, Haudenosaunee Wendat territories. I've been around this cycle of 62 years now, and the journey that I have lived has been a full one in the aspects of the colonial state that we're in. My ancestry is from Europe, and the colonial system of which I grew up in or was indoctrinated into at a younger age was a very perplexed one to me as a young person. Everything that was being taught to me, I knew was wrong, because the adults would speak one thing, but then you would see it differently in the eyes of the child, myself. My rebellious nature to not to accept led me down a very dark road, which was coupled by the system that was pushed on to me. And the different aspects of the system. I was physically abused as a young child, and groomed in a way that it seemed to be what adults were about. And so again, I dived deep into myself, into my teenage years, in a very rebellious way. I didn't like adults very much because all they did was lie and hurt. Even though I grew up in what we would call in the 60s, a middle class family. My release was through music as a way of feeling different things that were being put onto me, feelings of other people's. I've known about the doctrine of discovery as the education that I was afforded being in that colonial system. History and geography was my passion because I wanted to know what I wasn't being told. For every time I asked a question, it always come down to, well, you just have to have faith, or just because, or that's the way it is. This colonial system has been refined and retooled for 2,000 years. Our socially structured mechanisms. It's gotten worse over the last few hundred years, I'd say, you know, as far as the dominance of capitalism, and which is basically just another word for theft. Thank you. The main thing that I've come to understand after my long journey of healing and giving myself space to open my heart to the fullness that that exists now today. Because as a young person, I really didn't feel I had one. Now, we speak, all of us, that we know these things not to be right, but yet we let them continue to go on. And the reason is that we have fooled ourselves into giving up our responsibilities to a non-being person, when in fact we are the only real being person, i.e. I speak of corporation. Just out of curiosity, I would like to ask if people to reflect. Is there anybody in this room or on this call that is listening to my voice that has incorporated a company? Is there anybody in here who is a real person, but is also the owner?
Oh, you're muted, Michael.
Yeah, thank you. It just muted all there by itself there. I didn't touch it. But our humanity has been commercialized, has been incorporatized. Nothing is going to change, in my opinion, in the skin that I live in. I know for a fact that nothing is going to change until we take back our responsibility for the being. We are responsible for ourselves and for each other, not a corporation. A non-being cannot be responsible for anything. It can only be irresponsible. And many people, as I'm very active in very many different things, and I support my brothers and sisters for land back, especially here in unceded territory. But I have many friends that have youth who are on the front lines in Haudenosaunee territory in Toronto and different places that are standing up for the land back and to be given back the recognition.
Thank you, Michael.
And I want to thank you all for discussing and bringing yourself into a space.
Thank you for that sharing.
Thank you.
With such humility. Thank you for taking so long. Thank you.
Thanks. I think we have time for one more. Janet? You could unmute yourself. Thank you.
Okay, there it is. To reaction to the last person that spoke, I think whether or not the masses or individuals realize that they're incorporated isn't the issue so much as that they don't understand that there are choices and there are different ways that would bring us to a sustainable, all-inclusive reality, devoid of plastique. And I mean that in figuratively as well as literally. Someone said to me that the word I use to describe my clan, there's 2 words in my tribe you can use. And the one that I use says that I'm incorporated. And I'm asking, like, well, what does that mean? And no one will say. But that's, to me, but the fact that someone would bring that up is actually creating more division, because whether or not I'm incorporated, that does not stop me from the truth. And it doesn't stop me from wanting to act on the truth. What's stopping me from acting on the truth are people who either are incorporated or are not incorporated. And I hate to say this, but a lot of my oppression has come from my own people. Not necessarily my tribe. Some were in my tribe, and some were not of my tribe. There were other indigenous. So it really comes down to I just go back to teaching. You know, I think part of the answer that I see is in getting the history books to tell the truth, and to start incorporating, here we go with that word, native teachers from the different races. All, you know, I hate that word race too, but all the different nations or tribes, whatever those words are, I can't figure out what to use, because even now people are arguing the word nation. So I don't know, it's hard to talk in English, I guess. But anyway, thank you. It's just a comment.
Thank you, Janet. Yeah, it's very complex. And I'm gonna pass back to Mari, and so that we can start wrapping up in light of time.
Well, I believe we may have a little bit of extra time. I think, Mari, you were talking about that, but
Yeah.
we want to be acknowledging the time that people have committed to end at a particular time, that we may not be able to go over time per se too much. But I know Mari had some offering for us, and then we would be closing out. So if you would like to take it from there, Mari, that would be great.
Yes. Yeah. So in, I guess, 17 minutes, that's the time that we had allotted. I was going to be speaking also, and we will be doing ceremony out. So I would assume we're going to be anywhere from 15 minutes or a little bit more over time. So I just want to let everyone know. So I'm going to be speaking about what's currently happening with the church and a legal thing that's happening. And, you know, the one thing really that a lot of people tend to say is that it's already over, so we can't do anything about it. That was then, this is now. And that the church maybe said genocide, but, you know, maybe they're changing their ways. And I'm not sure that's happening here. So I would like to kind of give a little bit more information, and this is going to be pretty informational here. So according to the Catholicism, pagan can mean anyone who isn't a believer, anyone who doesn't practice Catholicism, or anyone who doesn't affirm the doctrinal moral teachings of the Catholic bishops. Two of the last conversations I had on Facebook, one with a Christian minister and another Christian, said that Jesus had come to fulfill the law of the Old Testament. And, you know, forget about Jesus, the New Testament of love thy neighbor and don't cast the first stone. The US is quickly being usurped by Old Testament punitive Christian nationalism imposed by the few and the Catholic Supreme Court on the many. Justice Amy, well, I can't even read her name right now for some reason, wrote that Catholic judges are obliged to adhere to their church teachings on moral matters. A legal career is but a means to an end, and that end is building the kingdom of God. Republican Bo Hurt received a standing ovation just recently after urging that the church is supposed to direct the government. And Mastriano called the separation of church and state a myth. In November, my God will take our state back. And I'm just wondering why the my God, because isn't that polytheism? It's saying my God versus your God. So I thought that that wasn't a belief system in the Christianity. So in the most recent legal suits that are centered around the church child sexual abuse, attorney Jeff Anderson said the church is banking on the 6 Catholic Supreme Court justices to overturn the extension of time allowing survivors to file their cases against clergy raping and abusing children and people. The church said it would hurt them monetarily if the Supreme Court justices don't overturn this. And from what I said before, we can see that they're not really into putting out any money, and they're saying, oh, we'll go bankrupt, which honestly, I don't believe at all. So when looking at the church boarding school genocide over Canada and the United States, and the Pope coming to apologize in 2022, does it really mean they've changed? Let's explore this. The Christianization of Lithuania, the last pagan country in Europe, was initiated by the Grand Duke of Lithuania, Mindaugas. This event ended one of the most violent processes of Christianization in European history. And in 1250, an enemy organized a major raid against Mindaugas. Attacked from the south and the north, Mindaugas managed to use the conflicts in his own interest. And in 1250, Mindaugas agreed to receive baptism and relinquish control over some of the lands to receive a Catholic-issued king's crown in return. Mindaugas and his family were baptized in a Catholic rite in 1251, and Pope Innocent IV issued a papal bull proclaiming pagan Lithuania now suddenly a kingdom. Does this sound familiar? And the state was usurped and placed under the jurisdiction of the Bishop of Rome. Even after becoming a Catholic, newly King Mindaugas did not cease worshiping his own gods. Despite his baptism, there were no efforts to convert the people. Mindaugas' successors retained paganism as a youthful diplomatic tool and weapon, allowing promises of conversion as a means of preserving their power and independence. To avoid clashes with the Teutonic Order, the Lithuanian co-ruler started negotiations with Pope Clement VI for conversion, when promised a royal crown for himself and his sons. King Louis I of Hungary offered a peace agreement to the co-ruler in 1351, where he obliged him to accept Christianity and provide military aid, of course, in exchange for, yes, you got it, a royal crown. The final attempt to Christianize Lithuania was made by Jogaila, who chose to accept a Polish proposal to become a Catholic and marry Queen Jadwiga of Poland. Baptized in 1386, he became King of Poland. This followed a conversion of most of his court, knights, and brothers, and created an episcopal see at Vilnius. The baptism of nobles was the first carried out in the capital, and the new Vilnius Cathedral was built in 1387 on the site of a now demolished pagan temple. In 1389, Pope Urban VI recognized Lithuania as now a Roman Catholic state. These people go somewhere and just say, I'm baptizing this place under the name of the king. I'm taking it over. Now it is this, without any regard for anybody else. Ethnic Lithuanian nobles were the main converts to Catholicism. Pagan customs prevailed among the common people of Lithuania and were secretly practiced. The king moved slowly in establishing Roman Catholicism because to stop veneration of the dead and to prevent celebration of traditional rites would have provoked massive rebellions. The collection of new feudal taxes associated with Christianity caused peasant uprisings, but Jogaila was able to lean on his nobles with whom he shared the benefits of the new political and religious system. Basically, This means that the nobles shared the tax money through pressuring the poor people to pay. This all created some of the wealthiest families in Russia, like the Galitzine family, who had titles such as Prince of Lithuania, Prince of Siberia, and the likes. And the family has been the highest rank of federal nobility to this day. Army officials, warlords, diplomats, generals, stewards, chamberlains, the richest men in Russia, and provincial landlords, basically robbers or old money. If you're drawing the same conclusions as I, you will see that this is all about making power deals, control, money, crowns, and land. Colonialism, not spirituality. The poor being strong-armed to pay up by the middle upper class nobles, middlemen, and church. Pagan practices persisted secretly, sometimes mixed into Christian rites. Old Lithuanian believers were pagans of Baltic origin into the 17th century and beyond. And this was only 300 or 400 years ago. So coming back to the present, what has been happening in the last 2 years with the church, and have they changed? In ancient oak groves across the country of Lithuania, believers gather at the sacred sites of worship for Remuva, a native ancient Baltic religious tradition that has existed in Lithuania since pre-Christian days. In June 2021, the European Court of Human Rights sided with the worshipers in a case against the state. The ruling found that Lithuania violated 3 articles of the European Convention on Human Rights when it failed to recognize Remuva as a traditional religion and provide state recognition. In 2018, the initial proposal was launched to consider recognizing Remuva as a formal religion. The general opinion was that the vote would pass, but in June the vote failed. Lack of recognition denies worshipers religious constitutional rights. Modern native faiths and neo-pagan religions have origins in the local ethnic and folklore traditions from pre-Christian era. Lithuania was the last pagan nation to convert to Christianity in 1387, centuries after other European countries. Pagan heritage and its traditions have encouraged a revival. Remuva has more than 5,100 followers as of 2011. Remuva considers itself Baltic spiritual heritage. Like other native religions in Europe, Remuva centers around a sacred relationship between humanity and nature. Sites of worship are often within natural or ancient sacred sites. Officially registered as a religious community in May 1992, the law states that after 25 years, a religion is registered, it can be granted state recognition. State recognition means worshipers may receive, now this is really important, aid from the state for their culture, educational and charitable activities. Religions may provide religious education in public schools and may perform state-recognized marriages. The national broadcaster must provide recognized associations with an agreed amount of airtime in which to broadcast their religious services. And the law provides that land that belongs to the state-recognized religious associations is not subject to land tax, something that all the churches are taking advantage of. In essence, a non-recognition means your practices are invalid in the eyes of the state. Remuva is very respected and established. However, the vote to establish state recognition triggered a conservative backlash led by Catholic, villainous Archbishop Grusas and Christian religious leaders that prevented securing recognition. Now, this is 2021, ladies and gentlemen. In an open letter, Grusas stated that the term ancient Baltic religious community, or indigenous people, historically, scientifically meaningless, unreasonable, and therefore misleading. The possibility that Remuva, if granted recognition, would be included in teaching religious education alarmed conservatives and Catholics. They formed a voting bloc, remarking that Remuva sought to destroy Christianity, and that it was supported by the KGB during the Soviet occupation, despite explicit evidence that pagans faced persecution by Soviet authorities. Quotes, this association can hardly be considered a religious organization. It would be a strange question to ask if they believe in the God of thunder. Remuva appears more like an organization for the preservation of national heritage, traditions, and rights. It is young and still developing. I am a Catholic and I do not intend to change my faith, and I do not advise you to either. Lithuania's relationship with Christianity is special because a person who believes in one God can easily understand and fall in love with the Christ. The old Lithuanian religion is monotheistic. Polytheism is a departure from old religion. Next quote, there are more charlatans among pagans than among Catholics, but is Remuva paganism really old religion? The answer is no. That religion cannot be revived. The ethnic traditions, customs, and celebrations of the village were transferred from generation to generation, but that was not the old religion. It was instead a naturally formed rural lifestyle. So says the church. June 2019, the president of Lithuanian Bishops' Conference, authority of the Roman Catholic Church, sent a letter to the chair of the voting panel to inform them of the church's position. And it argued that the very concept of ancient Baltic religious association was misleading and had no scientific basis, because there had never been a universal and uniform old Baltic faith. Prussians, Lithuanians, and Latvians had followed different divinities, rites, and customs. That allegedly surviving fragments of the faith were nothing more than superstitions and peasant customs with a shade of magic, and their importance to Lithuanian identity was exaggerated. And here's another great quote. Let us not forget that the Russian KGB has been taking consistent action to strengthen paganism in Lithuania. Those who were the leaders of Remuva who submitted this draft are simply following instructions from the Kremlin. Also, let us think about our relations with Poland. How would you look the Pope in the eye if you tried to adopt this proposal a year ago? You would have probably felt ashamed. The entire Christian world will laugh at us. In July 2019, Remuva, the indigenous people, complained to the Voting Commission on Ethics and Procedures that the statements made were false, that it did not seek to destroy Christianity, nor threaten to be the Catholic Church, nor support the KGB. The commission sided with Remuva. It observed that persons professing old Baltic faith had been persecuted by Soviet authorities, so claims alleging links between Remuva and the Kremlin were false. In 2021, the court found that providing specific status positions and privileges to some denominations while withholding the same position from others is prejudicial. When offering a privileged legal status position for certain religious or belief communities, status should be adopted in strict conformity with the principles of non-discrimination. The court's decision in June 2021 found that Lithuania violated the convention on 3 counts. The ruling was historic win and stated that minority religions are entitled to religious rights as well as financial and land compensation awarded to other faiths. Lithuania currently is facing disappropriate levels of immigration, low birth rates, get that, Chise, and an aging population. The director of the Othering and Belonging Institute says that in societies undergoing dramatic rapid change, frequently people narrowly define who qualifies as a full member of society. Those who find themselves outside the definition become the other. Minority groups often become focal points for this projected othering. The Catholic Church in Lithuania suggests that Catholicism is synonymous with being Lithuanian. Those who appear to disagree or challenge the church are often labeled as anti-patriotic. This cancel culture is similar to that in the United States. But this Lithuanian religion did not die. It was kept alive by farmers and country villagers who maintained the old ways even under Christianity and the Soviet rule. Will Lithuania, the church and its political elite, ever find room in the future for native faith that shaped its past? I wouldn't count on it. Anderson said the church is banking on the 6-3 conservative majority for the Supreme Court, so the justices don't have to pay up. This is serious business, people. This is serious business. So that is what I have to share today. It's still happening. I don't see it changing no matter what someone says, because the thing is, to really change, that means you change your precepts, you change your policy, you change your finances, you give back money you stole, you admit the truth. You don't just say, oh, this is genocide and that's it. You keep going because you have a change of heart. This doesn't point to a change of heart. And until I see the Pope doing a change of heart and saying, yes, we haven't been doing this in a good way, maybe we need to step down and listen to the indigenous people, and they need to counsel us and be the elders of us, because obviously we have a lot of sexual problems, and we have a lot of anger problems, and we have a lot of problems that we have mismanaged, and the church itself has that as a policy. Until they admit the truth and really do something about it, that is not change. That is saving face. And that's what I have to share.
Thank you so much, Mari. We appreciate that. We will take a little bit of time for sharing around this, and just something about what you said, Mari, just brings a statement up, and it's just the reality of what you've said, what Chise has said, what Auntie Malia has said, and some others have said. But I'm going to, put it through my words to say that Christian imperialism was always a part of not only US, American, European colonialism, but global European colonialism. We have to see that, and just like you're saying in the situation of Remuva, and how Christianity, but also colonialism, is working internally inside of Europe, is similar. It's not the same, but it's similar. So it's always been a part of it, and exactly why we have to be able to call it out. Exactly why we also, not only, like I said before, questioning, hey, was that God? Was that Jesus? The point is, why are we even considering that that's our template to even talk about right now? Right? So the part about memory that Chise brought up is also really important here. That we have to have our memories of what came before the pain started happening. You know, like even if we're, if we got a broken leg, we're like, oh, I want my leg to feel whole again. There is no part of that pain that we would want to stay with us. So we have to be really clear, really sure about what we're seeing here, and not allow the veneer, the patina of the oppressive context to stay with us. We want all of that off. We want the healing rains. We want the purifying fire of our past to release us from this. So just like we're talking about from the voices of the indigenous people here in what we now call Canada, to African people in the diaspora, which, as far as I know, Chise and I are part of that world, though we know where home is. Thank you. And even in Europe today. And I asked people again to look at what Ruth Bader Ginsburg did in 2005 when she was in the Supreme Court. Check that out. So as we think about this, what are some of the things that come up for us? And I hand us back to Cynthia and Michael for us to consider again the depth at which this doctrine of discovery is still working as we speak.
Thank you, Kumba. And so I invite our participants to speak upon our what is Mari has been speaking to. And I think there have been some chat messages. If Martin, if there's any that were relating to the topic.
And we might want to make sure we're keeping direct questions at that minute bell too, since we're over time. Yeah, keep that bell active, if you will. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, when we have a hand up, let's see. And
If we don't have any hands, even
oh, here we go. Oh, Katrina, welcome.
What do you want to do?
Oh, I'm gonna look for me. He's already talking.
Okay.
Yes, dear. Can happen within the next 3 hours, right?
Is it okay to speak or the
Please.
people? Yes. Okay, this is Katerina from Europe, from the lower lands. Really happy to be here because the subject is so close to my soul. At this moment, I'm taking care of my aunt of 97, so I can't open up the video, but I will speak. I especially want to share the following. I am raised as a Catholic girl, and even when I was a young child, you know, I was very serious, very spiritual serious, and wanted to go and help people. So when I was 9, I already considered going to Africa, you know, like this. And then I started to research more, and I was in, how do you say, a group of young people who were doing Holy Mass for young people. And the more I dived into it, the more answers couldn't be questions. The question of where is the goddess in this system? Why? I remember my mother saying one time, yes, these other people are Protestant, but they're also good people, you know, but I just didn't understand it, why there was no equality, you know. So I thought, what if people go abroad, can they really tell? Because maybe other people have to tell more to us. But I remember 1 year ago, I was very long time in circle with Sister Marie and Sister Cynthia, and then abuse came up, and it was so intense, and I really, really didn't know what to say anymore. And when the Pope visited, the only thing I could really hear is the cry of the woman who was standing there in front. At the same time, I'm here with my mother and her twin sister. My mother is dement, the twin sister is getting dement. and she wants me to pray. And she has been taking care of young people, of women, of sick people, of old people her whole life. They've been praying for me my whole life. And I get very confused. So I had a conversation in the last weeks, because this is going on already for like a year. I mean, it's going on my whole life, to find a way through this, to find a language that can go into the future. And I said to my aunt, she said, "Do you pray? Do you pray?" I said, "Yes," because that's what I found out. My heritage of my parents is praying and dreaming. And I said to her, I pray in a way that is not connected to a special religion, but I think this is where we can meet each other. And this is what I wanted to share today, because I find it a very, very difficult subject. But if I don't say anything, you know, then nothing happens as well. And I think this is it for today. And I'm very happy to be in this circle today. Thank you very much for.
Thank you, Katarina.
Yes.
Very much.
Yes. Yeah.
And because we're over time, I'm going to pass back to the center and thank you all. I'm sorry we didn't get to everyone's comments. If we missed you, my apologies.
And yes, if we can transition to Mari, for Mari to close us out for the day. And again, we thank all the attendees, all who have shared into the circle, all the speakers who have brought their wisdom and power, fire and water into this, and their spirits of their ancestors into this circle. Thank you, Mari.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. This has been very powerful today, everyone. And if you haven't shared something, please put it in the chat and maybe we can get back to you. We would also love you to join our mailing list, and I'm asking that that be put into the chat, the link. And if you can make a donation to the ancestors of the Four Directions, we would love to have that. It helps support our elders and also our mission here. And really, people, we are really wanting to work this out together. And we are going to be continuing this so that you can bring your voices in and we can learn all sorts of things, nonviolent communication from Michael and some other teachers, and really work out what are the next steps eventually after we kind of voice some of these ideas we have and trying to get them honed into what is the most congruent thing to be in harmony and balance with the universe and each other. How can then we start that process of rebringing that into the world? So you have a family here if you would like to pursue this with us. And we would love to have you join our mailing list, because I send out a newsletter with homework, and Chise eventually will have a reading club with that. And there are videos so you can educate yourself on these topics. So we can, when we converse, we can have a better understanding of the topic so we can bring that in. Everybody has really contributed very wonderfully today, and I appreciate it. And with that, we are going to be closing the circle. We're going to be doing ceremony out, and I will call on people to bring the ceremony in. And I just want to say there is much love for you here. And I really thank Akumwa for his co-hosting today. It was absolutely brilliant. And we thank you all for being here with us. So please join the mailing list. If you would like to make a donation, we'd love to have it. And we start our ceremony with Chise, thanking the ancestors.
Okay, can everyone hear me? I go Egwon. Ọlọ́jọ́ ni mọ́júbà ìbáṣẹ, ìwà ọ̀run mọ́júbà ìbáṣẹ, mọ́júbà bàbá ńlá, mọ́júbà ìyá ńlá, mọ́júbà bàbá kí ayíkú oríṣà, ìbá ìtọ̀nù. Ẹ̀gùn, fún mi ní ire, fún mi ní àlàáfíà, fún mi ní ọgbọ́n, fún mi ní ìwà pẹ̀lẹ́, fún mi ní ìfàyà. Kò sí ikú, kò sí àrùn, kò sí fẹ̀tíbọ̀, kò sí ọ̀fọ̀, kò sí àlọ́ba. May the ancestors keep away death. May they keep away disrespect. May they keep away sickness. May they keep away all those things that keep us from advancing on our path. May they bring us ire, love, light, health, justice, peace, and unity. Ashe, 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 sheo. I go. Put well, and I pass to the center.
Cynthia, please thank the directions.
Expressing deep gratitude to the elements and all the directions for their presence at our ceremony today. We thank them for all of the gifts that they have given us during this profound experience. Thank you. I pass to the center.
Dearest Elder Auntie Molly, will you pray us out?
I give you thanks for this beautiful time of connection in our minds, our hearts, our bodies, and spirits. We give you thanks for those who have questions, who are on the path of learning, and who seek the sacred knowledge. We give you thanks, O great Creator, for the ancestors who came before and left their beautiful messages with us. And I feel their presence with me every single day to keep me on this pathway in a good way. And give you thanks for each and every one of you contributing your time here today and sharing the love that we is so strong here. It will carry me through the rest of the day. And I thank you with all my heart for just being you and being here, being present today. There is nowhere else that we need to be but to be present to each other. I thank you with all my heart. We're all connected. We say Takam Snuknuka, and my language means we're all related.
Thank you. Thanking and blessing all that have joined this sacred circle from the four directions. We cleanse and purify ourselves in a good way as we close this circle, washing ourselves fully and completely with these medicines, bathing every corner of our energetic fields into the beyond of our daily lives. As we reflect in the coming days on all the messages and prayers shared today, may our thoughts, words, and deeds reflect the good work of our realigning our own relationships with Mother Earth and all forms of life upon her. This sacred circle is now closed. May we go out into the world wrapped in a blanket of love, light, and protection as we breathe new life into creation. All my relations.
All my relations.
Thank you so much. Once again, we will put a link to our mailing list, and that should be in the tech notes. Put the link to the mailing list and put the link to make a donation, a heartfelt donation, if you would like to do that. And we really appreciate it. And Martin, you also, if you want to put your email address in the chat, we can copy that if you would like to be on our mailing list. That's another option. And we so appreciate you. Thank you so much, everyone. So we'll leave the chat open.